Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Breakdown. It's week 5 of the fantasy football season, and the Dallas Cowboys are back, and the world sucks, basically, when the Dallas Cowboys are good, and that's what we're dealing with. And we're going to have to talk about how Zeke burned us this week, and that the Cowboys look like the Cowboys of old. But before we do that, let's welcome our co-hosts, Chris Fiamano, Fanduel Fee, and Mike Dunton Fee. How are you?
Doing good. Excited to be back. And let's talk some fantasy football.
Yeah. Dutton, how's it going over there with that funny dog behind your head?
It's funny. There's a dog behind my head. It's good. I'm taking a quick trip to the nation's capital, doing some politicking up here on Capitol Hill to take care of some fantasy issues. I got to talk to some politicians about lack of online sports betting in all 50 states. I'm working on that.
So. I like that. I'm watching animals walk backwards at the zoo, apparently.
Right. Can you please tell New York to get online sports gambling, please?
And Georgia.
You're so far behind the times.
Everybody's far behind the times. Like, not Washington, D.C. You get nothing but ads here in Washington, D.C. for online sports gambling.
Yeah. Well, go figure. They could tax it.
Right.
Last week, what we learned last week is that when it comes to starts and sits, maybe you shouldn't listen to Fee. But when it comes to locks of the week, he's been on fire. So last week he picked the Giants plus 7.5, sat here and told us how crazy a pick it was, and was the only one of the three of us to get the pick right. We missed on the Panthers plus 5. Like we said, the Cowboys are back. I definitely thought the Panthers had a little bit of a better defense. It was close. It was an 8-point game, I believe. So it wasn't like we got blown out of the water. And then
is that the Cowboys being back though, or is that the Panthers offense can't compete with the Cowboys offense?
I don't know.
That's what we have.
The Cowboys defense looks better than it did, and that's a big factor. And Zeke looked like
that's true
2 weeks in a row.
Right.
Dutton put all his eggs in the Kirk Cousins basket, and I don't know, fool you once, shame on you, or Kirk Cousins, fool you twice, shame on you. But as we said, Fee was correct with the New York Giants against the Saints, which brings us to this week's locks of the week. Dutton, we'll start with you. Who do you got?
I am going to the game of the week Sunday night, and I'm taking the Bills, who are getting 2.5 points.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the Chiefs offense can stop the Chiefs defense. Sorry, can stop the Bills offense. The Chiefs defense is porous at best. They are worse than a screen door at preventing water from coming through right now.
Yeah.
And the Bills offense is potent. So Chiefs might win this game, but it's going to be really close. I'll take the Bills.
All right. Fee.
All right. So I'm going to make a pick here that is going to seem very unpopular. And I don't even know that I would advise anybody making a real bet on it. But I'm taking Houston plus the 9.5 against the Patriots. They just came off an emotional victory last week, and it was barely won at that. Mm-hmm. And or loss. I'm sorry.
Loss. It was a loss.
Sorry, an emotional loss last week. And again, but still barely a loss at that. And I just don't know, with Mac Jones on the road, a rookie quarterback, giving 9.5 points is just too much, even though it's the lowly Texans.
I mean, they're bad. They
are bad. But I'll take the 9.5
is a lot for a 1-2 team. I agree with you, right? What's a 1 and right? Aren't the Patriots 1-2? I mean, or
yeah, but and a rookie quarterback on the road.
Yeah.
I'm basically just taking the number here. I'm throwing out the teams and I'm taking the number.
Yeah. The Patriots are 1-3. I said 1-2. I apologize. I'm going with the Cardinals giving 5.5 over the 49ers. You want to talk about rookie quarterbacks. You could do the whole Trey Lance show and it's going to be exciting, but the Cardinals are good. There's only one 4-0 team in the league. And guess who it is? It's the team that in February, I told you the NFL MVP is on. Kyler Murray show. the Cardinals are going to run away with this one. And that's my call for the week. But I do want to talk about something before we make our lock. I understand Logan Thomas is out. I understand Heineke is maybe not an elite quarterback. What have the Saints done to be going on the road and be giving 1.5 points to the Washington football team? The Washington football team may not have a good record, but they've been in every game they played, right?
But is it what the Saints have done or what Washington hasn't done, right? And
I'll tell you what the Saints did. They lost to the Giants. That's what
true.
the Saints did.
At home.
Yeah. So,
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, do you think it's the fact that the Washington defense has just not been what the Washington defense was supposed to be this year? And everyone's like, forget it. They're not that good.
I guess. I mean, I can't figure it out because the offense does, even with Logan Thomas out last week, it scored points, right? A lot of points. It was just a very odd thing to me, but I felt like it was a trap. So I don't want to recommend it as a lock of the week because I
no, don't pick that game.
So I'd stay away from that game. What do we think, fellas?
I like the Houston pick. I think that's a lot of points. But then again, it is the Patriots defense. So
minus Stephen Gilmore, who is now on the Panthers.
Stephon Gilmore.
Sorry.
I'm going to go with the Cardinals. I agree with you. I think the Cardinals are unstoppable right now until they are stopped. Then we will talk about them. What happens when they face adversity? They haven't yet. So I'll go with the Cardinals.
I'm in on the Cardinals.
All right, we're locking in the cards. Cardinals minus 5.5. We will keep an eye on the Bills and the Texans. It's a shame that would if we picked this, it was probably the one time I could bet on my Texans the whole season, and it would be because they're such big underdogs. Before we get into your weekly league starts of the week, we have a question from longtime listener Neil. And the question is, and I didn't even tell you guys this because it happened right before the show. He asked, how much do we trust that AJ Brown and Christian McCaffrey are back in practice to start? I could tell you right now, I'm not starting Christian McCaffrey until, like we said with James Robinson after week 1, I rather Christian McCaffrey score 25 points on my bench, knowing he's back, than have him come in and blow out his hamstring and miss the whole game and not get me any, right? AJ Brown's another story, especially if Julio Jones is out. What do you gentlemen think? Fee, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust them being back at practice at all. McCaffrey especially, I doubt he plays this week. And like you said, even if he did, I wouldn't expect it to be in a full capacity at all. But I don't think he will. On the other hand, the AJ Brown situation, I think his hamstring injury was less severe from what I was reading. And I think that he may play, but again, it's going to be in a limited capacity, I think. So I wouldn't necessarily trust that. If you were looking to start him at wide receiver, I'd probably say don't and find somewhere else to go.
Dutton?
Yeah, it's interesting because I own McCaffrey, right? I also own his backup. And who do you play, right? Like, because everything you said is right, Wayne. Like, McCaffrey plays the first series and then he sits the whole game, right? Tweaks it.
Decoy. You're going 2 backs and he's out there to take attention off of Chubba Hubba.
Is McCaffrey considered questionable this week?
He's questionable right now. Yes, he was.
I'd be so surprised if he played. I mean, I would, keep an eye on it an hour before and find out whether he's in or he's out. And I would imagine he's probably going to be out, and you could just play Chubba Hubbard.
Right. I would play AJ Brown. I think AJ Brown comes back, especially because they're losing receivers in Tennessee, so they need somebody to play.
Yeah, and AJ Brown's a guy that can make something very quick happen, right? He's a good route runner. He's pretty quick. You could get a lot of points in a half from AJ Brown before he gets on the sideline and has to rest up. All right. I think that's good. Obviously, some other big injuries. We mentioned Logan Thomas being out. I think, the Cowboys tight ends are out there, and I think they're both pretty solid backups at this point, right? I think Fee or Dunton, I can't remember, one of you two had him as sits last week. And I agreed with you because it was like a flash. It seemed like a flash in the pan, but they both produced again. So they got to be the top 2 waiver wire replacements. And Knox on Buffalo. He's starting to look like a legit tight end.
Don't forget, what's his name? We'll talk about him later. Uzoma from the Bengals become Joe Burrow's new favorite target.
Right? Yeah. So there's definitely options at tight end to get Logan Thomas, who went on the IL today, or it's still the IR in the NFL for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So that's a little injury talk, a little fan question talk. Let's move over to Fanduel Fees, the stacks of the week. Quick recap of last week. Josh Allen obviously did pretty well. They scored a lot of points. Russ to Lockett. Lockett didn't get too much. Russ did okay to kind of balance it. I don't think it was a bad pick. Darnold did great. Terrace Marshall didn't show up. Najee Harris was a great pick. Chuba Hubbard, you didn't spend a lot, so he didn't put up ridiculous points, but he did it wasn't a great thing. McLaurin was lights out, and we had mentioned Marshall as a standalone value pick, just didn't produce. Fanduel Fee, what do you have for us this week?
All right, this week a little bit tougher, a little tighter salaries, little bit less value, a little bit less injury replacement value. Yes, there are a lot of injuries, but I wouldn't necessarily play the people that are replacing those injuries. Let's start off. The first stack I got, I'm going back to the well here with the Giants. And I liked what Daniel Jones did last week. I don't think that he's going to do that again, but Dallas's defense, while it looked good last week, I am not sold on that secondary at all. So while I don't know that the Giants might be able to run the ball, I think they're going to have to throw it a lot, especially if they're going to try to keep pace with Dallas's offense. So I really like Daniel Jones this week. And believe it or not, I want to stack him with Kadarius Toney, who had 9 targets last week. I think he had 6 catches for 70 or 80 yards, and he looked fantastic. I really like the way he looked. It's probably not a cash game play, probably more of a tournament play, because it's not, a safe, low, he's not a safe high floor type of guy. But I really like the way Toney looked last week. And if they continue to get him the ball and the Giants receivers are still injured the way they are, I really like the Jones to Toney stack. And you could even bring it back with CeeDee Lamb going the other way in that game, which I really like also because I think is Amari Cooper still banged up?
Yeah,
a little bit
questionable this week too. Yes.
Yeah, even if he plays, I mean, CeeDee Lamb's the guy. I love everything that CeeDee Lamb does for that offense, and he should really take it to the Giants defense. So I like the Jones to Toney stack with Lamb on the comeback. Moving on, I got I'm looking at Heineke for the Washington football team at 7,300 against the Saints. And I like to stack him up with McKissick at 5,300. Antonio Gibson also banged up, probably will play. But I expect them to maybe mix in McKissick a little bit more this week. And the way he catches the ball out of the backfield at 5,300, really, I mean, if he gets in the end zone once for you, he's going to put up some points. I really like, and those are my 2 stacks. Moving on to value plays, really love Trey Sermon this week for the 49ers. He's down at 5,800. They're playing the Cardinals. He will do a lot more than just run the ball. He's going to catch the ball out of the backfield. And again, same type of deal. Arizona should, put up big points against San Francisco, and they're going to have to stay with them. Really like Trey Sermon this week at 5,800. Deante Johnson with Claypool banged up, Juju not doing anything, and I know Ben is a disaster, but I really like Deante Johnson. He's getting a ton of targets. He's only at 7K against Denver, and I mentioned him earlier with the stacks, but I really like CeeDee Lamb. He's actually only 6,900 this week against the Giants. So whether you stack him or you play him alone, I really like CeeDee Lamb this week.
Nice. I like it. One thing I think to keep in mind with McKissick as well, is that they don't have that tight end, right? And when you got to do a check down instead of having trusty Logan Thomas there, you're going to have to look to your backs. And I really like the McKissick play this week. So there you have it. Those are FanDuel fees, stacks of the week. We're going to move on and we're going to look at starts and sits for your weekly league. It's an odd week this week, right? Like the good players have good matchups and the marginal players that you want to kind of sneaky sit have bad matchups. So it was kind of hard to pick some of these this week. And a lot of my picks came from the same couple games before we get into it. So one thing to keep in mind is how we did last week. Tom Brady is a dick and burned us. How much hype was around that damn game?
It was a boxing match,
soccer
right?
team now, right? I coach my daughter's soccer team now. She had a birthday party after that. I didn't get to watch any football. Last Sunday, but I was okay with it. Why? Because Tom Brady was returning to Foxborough and we were going to have a great game and it sucked, right?
It was a good game. It wasn't a good fantasy game, right? The game was good.
I mean, it was kind of a boring type.
It was
game.
boring. You're a Tampa Bay Bucks fan, you know, like
the last quarter of that game was entertaining.
If you
the last quarter of that game
kept falling asleep.
Right.
Anyway, I went with Matt Ryan, which was a good pick. Dunton, we joked already, went with Kirk Cousins, and we locked in on Tom Brady, and he did poorly. But the rest of our starts were good. Gibson did fine. He did get banged up, like you said. McLaurin was amazing, and you know we told you the Ravens' defense can't stop tight ends, and Noah Fant got in the end zone, as did Darren Waller, who Dunton picked. I personally killed 2 players last week because Julio Jones didn't even make it to Sunday. It was my start of the week, and Logan Thomas left in the first quarter and now is on the IL. But I did tell you, remember I said Kendrick Bourne was going to be a sneaky play last week. And if you're in a PPR, he got you 11 points. So that wasn't too bad. So we'll start with Dutton. Who are you starting this week at quarterback?
Well, I'm not starting Kirk Cousins ever again. It's the last time I mentioned his name when I'm not making fun of him. I'm starting, this is going to be a weird play, but I'm going to start Mac Jones this week against the Texans that we talked about. I think Belichick is going to take the reins off of him after last Sunday's terrible game that you watched. Mac Jones played amazing in that game. He did. He was the reason that the Patriots were in the game.
Yeah.
He probably played better than Tom Brady in that game. It doesn't mean he's better than Tom Brady by any means, but
right.
I just think against the Texans, I think it's a good chance for Bill to say, all right, Mac, show us what you got, right? You had us in a close game against the defending champs, and now we're going against this lowly, no offense, Wayne, Texans team. Let's see what you got. Let's open it up. So I'm going to go with Mac Jones this week.
Yeah, I could be on board with that. Fee, how about you?
Yeah, so I am going with Daniel Jones. I mentioned him earlier. I just really like the spot that he's in. I don't believe in Dallas's defense. I don't think they're as good as they showed last week. And in order for the Giants to stay with Dallas and their high-scoring offense, Daniel Jones is going to have a repeat of last week. And I like the way the Giants' offense looked last week, so I'm sticking with Daniel Jones this week.
I like it. I'm going with his counterpart, and I'm taking Dak. And now people may think that I'm crazy for saying to start Dak, right? Dak's on fire. But I'm going to explain to you why I picked Dak, because I've had a couple texts and questions about it. Dak was coming off a big injury. Most of the people like myself who drafted Dak probably drafted another good quarterback to go along with it. So every week you're playing, who do I start? And I've had Matt Ryan, who the Falcons aren't good, but he's putting up fantasy points, right? So I've been going through this. This week, it's not a question for me. This week, it's Dak is back. I said it at the beginning of the show. The Cowboys are back. They're a force to be reckoned with. I mean, Dak didn't pass. I don't think he hit 200 yards last week. He still got 35 fantasy points because of all the touchdowns, and he ran for 50-ish yards. I forgot the exact total. So I think Dak is the play of the week. I think the Giants, the Giants, Giants could be 0-15. Cowboys could be 15-0, and it's going to be a great game, right? It always seems to be that way. But I think Dak and Daniel Jones have great games in this one. So, gents, who do we want to lock in?
I'll go with Dak.
I can go with Dak.
Dak it is. Let's move on to running back. There's a whole mess of good ones here. I see. Fee, we'll start with you this time, Fee.
All right. So I am going with Damian Harris with New England. They're playing the Texans. We've just spoke about how poor the Texans are. And while, yes, Mac Jones, this is a chance for him to continue with his good play, I think that New England should probably try to run the ball as much as possible. And I think that that's Damian Harris all day long.
Dutton.
I'm going with Leonard Fournette against the Dolphins. I think the Bucs figured out that Tom Brady cannot throw the ball 50 times a game and expect to be anywhere near the person he's supposed to be. They ran the ball well against the Patriots last week, who is a really good defense. I think they improve on that this week and run the ball down the throat of the Dolphins. So I'm going with Leonard Fournette.
And I'm going to go with the same guy I went with last week, because if you remember, I went with Jonathan Taylor against the Dolphins' porous rush defense, which is the worst fantasy points allowed defense to running backs. And I said, if Jonathan Taylor comes through, he's going to be good. If he's not, we'd have to talk about a bust. He had over 100 yards. He had a touchdown. He's back. The Ravens defense, the Ravens are winning games. The Ravens defense has been very, very kind to opposing fantasy players, right? Opposing fantasy players are scoring tons of points. And we've talked about it pretty much ad nauseum on this show, that how we feel about Carson Wentz. So I think this game is going to be kept. It's the Monday night game, I believe. And if the Colts want to keep it close, it's going to be through Jonathan Taylor. And I think he gets the job done for a second week in a row. And I think we could put all that crazy talk I had about being a bust behind us.
And it keeps Lamar off the field, right?
Well, it keeps him running off. Yeah, running crazy.
Yeah. Keeps Lamar off the field.
So who do we want to lock in?
I don't know. I think Leonard Fournette against the Dolphins is pretty tasty.
Yeah, the Fournette play is nice. I mean, I really like Damian Harris, but that's my pick. So, I mean, I go Fournette.
Too.
I mean, I'm going to tell you to start anyone against the Texans. I watched what they did. Everyone on. I really think like they called some guy off the practice squad, the Bills, at halftime. They called someone on the practice squad and said, "Hey, do you want to score a touchdown today?" And they did. So I'm good with Damian Harris if we want to lock.
Yeah, let's go with Damian Harris.
All right, Damian Harris locked in. Wide receiver, I'll start. I didn't get to start yet. I'm going with a Fanduel Fee favorite in Laviska Shenault Jr. He's got a great matchup this week against Tennessee, and DJ Shark fractured his ankle, and Trevor Lawrence is throwing it. I mean, we've talked about it time and time again. He's not necessarily having a great fantasy year. He's not having a great rookie year, but he is putting up numbers for everyone else around him, right? Because he's throwing 2 touchdowns a game and throwing 3 interceptions a game. And hopefully one of those 2 touchdowns goes to Shenault, because we saw that he's still the main target for targets and yards. So that's my pick. Fee.
All right. So this guy is going to be the bane of my existence this year, but I got to give him a chance again because I believe that they need to get him involved. And that's what McVay said actually so much this week. And I got to go with Robert Woods here. I know Kupp is the guy, but if you have Robert Woods on your team, you're questioning him, right? You're like, well, do I play him? Do I not play him? He hasn't done crap all year long, but they're playing Seattle, and Seattle's secondary is not all that great. And I believe McVay when he says that he wants to get Woods involved more. And, I guess it's just a matter of whether or not Stafford believes that he can get him the ball where he wants to get him the ball. But I got to go with Woods. I know it's a questionable pick, but I think that he comes through for you this week.
I like it. Dutton.
I'm going Emmanuel Sanders. I'm going deep down the wide receiver roster against the Chiefs. That game is right for a 48-42 score.
Probably.
And I just think Emmanuel Sanders could end up with a lot of targets. Obviously Diggs is the main focus, Beasley after that, but Sanders is getting looks and he's doing stuff with them. So I'm going to go with him against that bad Chiefs defense.
I like all three. Who do we want to
I like Chenault the best. Chenault's the best because there's no DJ Shark. Like, got to throw the ball.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to tight end. No Logan Thomas. No, is Gronk back? What do we think? What's the word on Gronk? No Gronk.
He's hoping he's not at practice, but he said he's going to try to play, which means don't count on it this week. Maybe next.
There's enough in the tight end.
Tampa Bay has enough tight ends that they'll be all right.
Right. So, Fee, who do you like at tight end this week?
I'm going with Noah Fant. I know if you have him, you're playing him. But no Jerry Jeudy and potentially no Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah.
I'm not certain about who the quarterback's going to be, but either way, they're going to have to get the tight end the ball, over the middle of the field, and whether it's a dump down or whatever. So I'm big on Noah Fant this week against Pittsburgh.
Dutton, you mentioned your guy earlier. You want to talk a little bit more about him here?
Yeah, except I'm questioning this pick because when I made this pick earlier today, the news broke. So I'm picking CJ Uzoma against the Packers.
What news
now I'm
broke?
worried.
What news broke?
That Jalen Smith is now signed with the Packers, which bumps up their linebacking core tremendously.
Yes.
Which could hurt CJ Uzoma's chances of getting the ball a lot on Sunday. But I still think Joe Burrow finds him. I still think that he has become a coveted target of Joe Burrow as he's making his comeback from his injury. And clearly relies on him. The guy had 2 touchdowns last week and had a boatload of targets. I felt like every time the ball was thrown, it was near him. So
yeah, especially with T. Higgins not around. That's usually his safety net.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with Schultz, Dalton Schultz on the Cowboys. I think it's time. I was just as skeptical as you were last week, Fee, but I think it's time. Jarwin is a nice little pickup too. I mean, Dak looks at both of them, but it seems like Schultz is the guy that is
definitely Schultz.
Yeah, it seems like he's the main one. So that, and again, I think Dak's going to have a big game, and he seems to like his tight ends now. Again, I like all three of these pick. I do agree with your hesitation after the news of the Packers signing. So which one do we like here?
I like Schultz. I really like Schultz a lot.
I think Schultz ends up with 20 points.
Okay. I'm big on him being a pickup this week. I'm big on him, with the Cowboys offense, especially the way he was throwing him the ball last week, and against the Giants defense, who can't cover the tight end at all. I think that's a fantastic.
All right. So to review, our lock 'em in starts of the week: Dak Prescott, Damian Harris, Laviska Shenault, and Dalton Schultz. So we're going to move on to the sits of the week. And if you look at my notes, gents, on quarterback, I had a tough time. I'm leaning towards who Dutton. I'm not going to reveal it yet. I'm not going to spoil it. But here's why it was a tough week, right? So if you look at the bottom feeders, fantasy defense against quarterbacks, for example, you have the Washington football team, right? Are you going to start Jameis Winston against? I'm never going to trust Jameis Winston. I don't care if it's the Washington football team. I'm still not trusting Jameis Winston. You have the Falcons. Are you going to start Zach Wilson? No. There's no way, right? You have the Chiefs. Well, duh, you're starting Josh Allen. It doesn't matter who the heck he's playing. And then you have the Buccaneers. You're not starting Tua or Jacoby Brissett, whichever one's there. And then you have the 49ers, and duh, you're starting Kyler Murray, right? So when you get into that mix and then you look at the top defenses are playing teams like Aaron Rodgers. Again, you're not going to sit him, right? So it was like there was no one to mix around really for the quarterback position this week for me. It was a very hard pick. So I didn't even pick one. but I am leaning towards Dunton's pick this week. So Dunton, we'll let you start with sit of the week at quarterback.
I'm sitting Matt Ryan. As bad as the Jets are offensively, and congrats Jets fans, you won a game. Their defense is not bad.
And they don't allow touchdowns, right?
They don't allow touchdowns, right? And there's something to be said about these games in London, right?
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think that they are conducive to good fantasy days, production wise, right? It messes up your rhythm, it messes up your schedule. It's not your norm. You're traveling out of the country. It's a 6-hour across the ocean plane ride.
If it rains at all, you're screwed.
Yep.
Yeah, like it's not. Yeah, it's so. I just worry about it. And like I said, number one thing is the Jets do not give up points, as they don't score a lot of points, but they don't give up points either. So I'm going to go with Matt Ryan.
All right, Fee.
So I also had a tough time coming up with a sit this week. And I decided to go with someone who you're going to play probably no matter what. But I decided to go with Jalen Hurts this week against Carolina. The Panthers defense has really been solid this year. And I just thought, that I'd take a flyer this week and say, you probably want to sit Hurts. He's probably not going to put up the astronomical amount of points that he's been putting up so far this year.
That's fair. Hurts was our lock sit of the week, and he burned us. And I kind of just feel like, and no, I'm not putting him on the real talent level, but in a fantasy manner of speaking, I think Hurts is a guy that is Lamar Jackson. The Eagles could lose by 10, and somehow this guy's going to have 30 points. I just don't get it. I don't think he's that great of a quarterback, but he's scoring fantasy points. So
yeah, he's a good fantasy quarterback, but I'm with you. Yeah.
But Carolina just got Gilmore, and the defense was already good in the first place. So
he can't play this weekend, though, right? Gilmore, he's got one more game out.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm good with Matt Ryan, like I said.
Yep, Matt Ryan for sure.
Okay, and we'll keep an eye on Jalen Hurts. Moving the running back, we got screwed. Both Fee and I thought it was Zeke last week. Zeke is back, ladies and gentlemen. He looks good. He blew up last week. It was the second 2-touchdown week in a row, I believe, right? So yeah, Zeke is back. We got burned. I'll start because Fee mentioned it earlier when you were talking about Daniel Jones. You don't know that they'll be able to run the ball. So I said sit Barkley. I feel like he's still in that position where in week 5, you're afraid to sit him because finally he's going to have that big week, even though he hasn't. But I don't think this is it.
Yeah, I don't think this week's the week.
So I say sit Barkley. Fee, what about you?
I'm going with Antonio Gibson this week. I mentioned earlier about McKissick. And with Logan Thomas out and everything else, they've really been giving McKissick more work, and Antonio Gibson is kind of not getting as much as he should get, honestly. Because he's a very good running back, and they should probably run the ball more often. I don't know how this game is going to turn out against the Saints, but I think that if you're going to play McKissick because you think that they're going to throw the ball more, especially with Logan Thomas out, that Antonio Gibson is not going to get the amount of points that you think that he should probably get. So I'm sitting Antonio Gibson this week.
I like it. And then Dunton.
I'm sitting Najee Harris. It's just, I don't know what they're doing, but he's going to be done playing football this year by week 7 because he's never off the field.
He's getting beat
and
up, man.
He is their offense. And the Broncos are one of the best defenses in football. We've seen that so far. They're going to dare Ben Roethlisberger to throw that ball all day. And word for anybody that's listening at home, Ben Roethlisberger can't throw the ball anymore. It's why they're already considering whether or not they should be playing Ben Roethlisberger.
They shouldn't.
They shouldn't. We can talk about that another time. But yeah, I just think Najee Harris has a tough time because teams are going to start zoning in on him as the way to stop the Steelers.
Longtime listener Anthony does not believe in the Broncos defense. He thinks they're frauds, by the way.
Wow. Okay.
Well, they have played weak teams, so he might not be wrong with that. So.
That's what he said.
I was actually going to say that I don't think that Najee should be our lock just because of the amount of volume that he gets. Like you said, he doesn't come off the field. He catches the ball in the backfield. He gets all the run. Like he's just, a volume guy and he just racks up points. But I do sort of believe in the Broncos defense, probably a little more than longtime listener Anthony. But after hearing Dunton talk about the injuries that the Steelers have, it might not be a bad idea to sit him this week.
But they're just decimated, right? I mean, every other player on their team is hurt, and Ben is still standing up and trying to throw a ball that he can't throw.
Well, I have Najee Harris on one of my teams, so I would hate to say sit one of my players. But
we can sit Saquon. I think Saquon had a good week last week because of one big catch.
Right.
So yeah, if he gets tackled,
it doesn't mean the reality is that the Giants cannot run the ball.
Exactly.
And it doesn't matter. You could throw Walter Payton in that backfield or Barry Sanders, okay, and the Giants will still not be able to run the ball.
It's hard.
So I don't think it has anything to do with Saquon, which sucks. It's their offensive line, which is unbelievable that they can't even open up a hole to run the ball. But I would agree with that. I mean, it's probably Saquon, and the only reason I think is because the Giants cannot run the ball, and it sucks to say it, but I think it's true.
All right. But I do think all three have rough weeks. I don't see how some of these guys pull it off. Going to wide receiver, I'll start. Dutton said sit Matt Ryan. I said I don't want to tell you to sit players that I have, but I am sitting him because Calvin Ridley stinks, ladies and gentlemen. He has as many drops as catches as he does in a game, okay? And he cannot find the end zone. So if you're getting 14 targets a game and you're catching 7 of them for 50 yards, that's just frustrating. Sure, in a PPR league, you're getting 12 points, but you're sitting there knowing you should have about 25, and this guy can't, and he's a number 1 receiver, right? Something's got to change. You got Cordero Patterson being Mr. Gadget, Inspector Gadget, and catching balls, running balls, doing everything.
He's doing everything.
Yeah. I don't think Ridley's startable even against the Jets. We said the Jets don't allow touchdowns, and I don't think Ridley finds the end zone this week. And if he doesn't find the end zone, he's not a fantasy play. So that's my feeling there. Dutton.
I'm sitting Odell Beckham Jr. because I'm tired of hearing about him. So we need to sit him. I am like the Browns don't need him. They're doing fine without him.
That's because they just run the ball.
Well, and they're doing a great job with it because they're not going to pay Baker Mayfield all that money. That's why they're running the ball this year to say to Baker, you want to be a Brown quarterback? Fine, but you're not the reason we're winning. I don't know. There's something about Odell this year that I just have a hard time with. So I'm sitting him until he shows us something. Like, show me something.
To be fair, I am on the other side of that, Dutton. I believe that, he's coming off injury. And so I kind of want to give him the benefit of the doubt. It's just kind of like a Saquon situation where like you got to give him a few weeks to kind of get his feet under him and get into that football shape, they say. But I believe in Beckham. I think he's going to have some sort of a comeback year, and that may not start this week. But I think eventually, maybe, halfway through the season or even later on in the year, I think the Browns will end up utilizing him more. And I think he's going to have a bit of a comeback year this year.
I think he becomes a cancer in the locker room and is cut by week 13.
Wow.
Oh, goodness.
Because he's going to complain about targets. He's going to come. Yeah, I'm just throwing it out there, right? Going big or going home.
Wow.
All right, Faye, what do you got?
I got Tyler Boyd this week against Green Bay. My thinking here is T. Higgins is hurt. Burrow's been spreading the ball around, and the big plays have been going to Jamar Chase, and I don't expect that to stop. So I think Tyler Boyd should probably be a sit this week against a fairly strong Green Bay defense.
Yeah, I'm good with sitting Boyd. I agree. I think the Packers, I've always liked the Packers defense. They're opportunistic. And I think they
They're
bully
getting
around.
better.
Yeah, they're getting better. And I think they bully around wide receivers. I'd be good to lock him in. What do you
I'm
think?
not
Doc?
happy about it because he's on my team, but I can lock it in.
We could go Ridley or OBJ. I just, like I understand what you're saying, Fee, but the only reason I'm on page with Dunton is that they're not passing the ball. They're not.
No, they're not.
They're not throwing the ball.
Yeah, I'm fine with sitting Beckham this week. Like I said, I think it's more of a mid-year to late year, late in the season type of deal where he has that comeback in him. But I think for
on
right
another
now,
team.
What?
On another team because he's not going
On
to be
another team. All right, yeah, but for right now, I'm fine.
Back on the Giants, so Daniel Jones is someone to throw the ball to.
Woo! Can you imagine?
That would
The
be
Giants have like
They got
8,000.
Fiamano
The
there.
Giants have 8,000 wide receivers right
Yeah,
now.
but they can get rid of
the
some.
wide receiver is not an issue for the Giants. Let's move on to tight end, where we were wrong last week, mainly because I forgot to write down who we said. So we didn't have an answer. I don't know who we said that our lock at tight end was, but let's move on to this week. Fee, you mentioned I have 2 picks because one of them is going to be a stunner, but Fee, we'll start with you.
I'm going with Robert Tanyan this week against Cincinnati. He hasn't really done a whole lot with Rodgers this year, and I don't expect it to start this week. And I just think that he should probably be a sit this week.
Done.
I'm sitting Dallas Goedert versus the Panthers. Panthers defense is tough, and they're coming off of a tough loss against the Cowboys, but now they're playing a team that's not as finely polished offensively, and I think that they can shut down Dallas Goedert and Jalen Hurts, to be honest. But yeah, I'm going to sit Dallas Goedert.
13 receptions and 93 yards. That's what the Arizona Cardinals have allowed to the tight end. I'm telling you, put it in, lock it in. George Kittle is a sit this week. And we don't know what's happening at quarterback. We don't know what we're going to look at. I've been high on the Cardinals since February. I told you AJ Green was going to have a bounce back year. I've been anything Cardinals. My only issue with the Cardinals is Klingberry, because I don't trust that guy. But I think the Cardinals defense is good. They're bullies out there. They're, like I said with the Packers, they're opportunistic. They force turnovers. They hit hard. I like them. I think Kittle is sit this week, but I did also have Tanyan, so I'm good with locking in Tanyan as well.
We can lock in Tanyan, and here's what I was going to say when Fiamano was talking about it, that he doesn't get a lot of passes from Aaron Rodgers. That's because Aaron Rodgers hates tight ends. So
Yeah.
that's what it comes down to.
Yeah,
He liked him last year because he needed him, but yeah.
So let's go a quick recap before we let you go back to your fantasy worlds. Our lock of the week is the Arizona Cardinals, giving 5.5 to the San Francisco 49ers. Fanduel Fees stacks of the week. He likes Danny Dimes and Tony over there in New York, and that you could bring it back with CeeDee Lamb on the other side in that game. He likes Heineke and McKissick in the Washington football team against that Saints defense. He sees Sermon as a value play, and Deante Johnson with Claypool out as another value play, and CeeDee Lamb, as we mentioned, as a standalone value play. Our locks of the week at starts: Dak Prescott, Damian Harris, Laviska Shenault, and Dalton Schultz. Our locks of the week at sits: quarterback is Matt Ryan, running back is Saquon Barkley, your wide receiver is OBJ, and your tight end is Robert Tanyan. George Kittle. But thanks for tuning in to another week. Make sure you like us on, if you subscribe to our YouTube page and our Spotify page, we don't even need to tell you when this episode's up. You get a nice little alert on your phone, and you can click that alert and it takes you right to it and you listen. We appreciate you listening. We keep the questions coming. We love the text. We love to have them. We'll bring them up on the show when we're stumped by them and talk about them. And yeah, we just love that you guys are coming along for the ride, and we appreciate your listenership. So go get them, win some fantasy games, and give us all the credit.